Last year on this day, I talked about an Irishman named Jim Mahoney. On this St. Patrick's Day, I'll talk about an Italian player from a city that has been a breeding ground for baseball pretty much since the beginning of the sport. Not San Francisco. Good guess. I'm talking about San Jose. Starting off the show on a blustery day, talking about an Italian guy and a couple of Spanish cities. Why, that's not a very Irish start to a St. Patrick's Day show. But you know me, I'll make a tie-in. Here we go with another episode about a local ball player born and raised, schooled and coached, then he retired and passed away, all within a few square miles of his hometown. Notice I didn't mention the word played, because except for his school days, once he turned pro at the age of 20, the 5'11", 180-pounder played everywhere but San Jose. Between 1942 and 1960, he played in many places, which is probably why after retiring, he stayed in his hometown. Though not a Seattle Rainier player, he ties in with one of my themes of the moment. Local players who would become teachers and coaches, sometimes both. Guys from around my hometown that Dad got signatures from when they were players or coaches back in the 1950s. And even if their playing days were not exactly stellar, or lasted very long, or did anything super spectacular, they did go on to have stellar teaching and coaching careers and are in a variety of halls of fame for their achievements and accomplishments. But what is spectacular is the fact that they took their time to be mentors while raising their own family. And family is a big part of this channel. In my last episode, I did not mention Johnny Oldham was married to a local knockout he met while at San Jose State. Johnny and Marianne raised 3 daughters. We are very pro-women on this channel, as was Johnny, who passed on his knowledge to the ladies when he was hired to coach and then led to a championship, the San Jose Spitfires, a short-lived ladies softball league. This player was born 1922 in San Jose and is 10 years older than Johnny Oldham. These two men do share a few similarities. Both were raised in San Jose, both attended San Jose State, both played in the PCL, and both were successful coaches at Santa Clara University. But before coaching the Broncos baseball team, right after retiring from playing, the man of the moment managed the San Francisco Giants minor league team for 2 seasons. And those teams had some great players and future Giant Hall of Famers, who the previous 3 seasons were his teammates. The difference between these two local coaching legends is Johnny Oldham made it to the majors and Salvador Frank Taormina, nicknamed Sal, did not. But Sal has a better coaching record at S.C.U. and is the school's all-time winningest coach. I guess it all depends on what's more important to you in the long run, playing in the majors for who knows how long, or decades as a successful coach and teacher. Johnny Oldham got to do both. But I bet Sal wouldn't change places with Johnny, especially since Johnny got into only one MLB game for a couple of minutes and just stood on first base. Sal's last name, in Italian, it's Taormina. In English, the R is silent. It's Taormina. So, he turned pro in 1942 as an outfielder, but could play the corners, and is one of those players who bats left and throws right. Playing in 134 games his first season, split between 4 teams, working his way down before working his way back up. First in Double-A with the Seals and their manager, Lefty O'Doul. Sal got into 1 game before heading down to the Salem Senators, Class B, and then even farther down to Class C, California League, playing on 2 teams, the San Jose Owls and the Santa Barbara Saints. And he was named 1942 California League MVP while with those Saints. That's pretty cool. Your first season in open baseball and your league MVP? Granted, there was only 4 teams, and it was Class C, but still, there's quite a few MLB Hall of Famers and baseball greats who played for the Saints. George Brett, Ken Griffey Jr., Reggie Jackson, and local heroes Ricky Henderson and Vada Pinson. The bright start to Sal's career was dimmed, and I think you know why. Yep, World War II. And he'd go from wearing a colorful baseball uniform to one that is all one color, olive drab. Sal Taormino missed 3 full seasons while serving in the military. No info on him about this period or his younger days. I don't even know what high school he went to. His career picked up again in 1946 on what would have been his local team as a kid, the San Francisco Seals, who at this particular time are a Triple-A affiliate of the Yankees and coming off back-to-back championship seasons, with 1946 making it 3 in a row. Sal played in over 100 games on that team alongside another Italian named Vince DiMaggio. Sal had a great season, tied for first in triples with Ferris Fane, who was the Seals star that year. Tied for second in home runs and third in RBIs. But on the 1947 squad, Sal played in only 51 games, and in 1948 played in no games and was sent down to Double-A with the Little Rock Travelers. Played a little, then sent to New Orleans with the Pelicans, where he'd play with the Seattle Rainier and Pittsburgh Pirate player Monty Basgall. The slide down would continue from the Southern Association League to the South Atlantic League Single-A with the Charleston Rebels. Then the Macon Peaches. Finally, in 1949, Sal got to unpack his suitcase in Charleston, back with the Rebels for the entire season. But it just kept getting worse for Sal, leaving beautiful Charleston and sent to Bakersfield, California, Class C with the Indians. And for the next 2 seasons, while trying to beat the Bakersfield Heat, he'd play with a couple of young California pitchers. In 1950, a 21-year-old Don Mossy, and in 1951, an 18-year-old first-year pro named Bud Daly. This says something about Class C pitching. You never know who you're going to come across. But on the other hand, during his career, Sal averaged single-digit home runs. Yet, in 1951 with Bakersfield, he hit 25. Make of that what you will. For 1952, he was closer to home playing with the Seals before being sent up north to the Yakima Bears. 1953 would be Sal's 5th stint with the Seals, and finally saw some stability in the high minors and in his living arrangements after traveling for most of his career. Sal was a mainstay with the Seals for the next 5 seasons, all the way through to their final year of existence in 1957, when they went out on top as PCL champs. But with the arrival of the New York Giants in 1958, the Seals would move to Phoenix and change their name to the Giants, which made sense because there ain't no seals in Arizona. For the next 3 seasons, Sal would play with the Giant greats. In 1958, it was Willie McCovey, Felipe Alou, and Tom Haller with Dusty Rhodes. In 1959, they added Manny Mota and Jose Pagan. Each season, Sal Taormina was with the Giants. He was the oldest player on the team, with his last season as a player in 1960 with the now Tacoma Giants, who moved up north, and to go along with the new scenery, they added Matty Alou, Juan Marichal, and Gaylord Perry. That 1960 team is considered one of the best minor league teams in baseball history. Still with the Tacoma for 1961, but instead of playing with the Giant greats, he will now be instructing them as their new coach, retaining some greats and coaching up the new arrivals, Chuck Hiller, Mike Baxis, Dick Gernert, and an 18-year-old Jose Cardinal. Sal's Giants finished in first place, and in 1962 they finished in second place. During his career, Sal Taormina hit 110 home runs and played in more than 1,750 games. Unfortunately, none of those games were in the majors. He did, however, play on some really good Pacific Coast League teams, and since its founding in 1903, at times, was considered on par with the 2 major leagues, and close to becoming the 3rd a couple of times. But that's no consolation for Sal Taormina, because it's not the major leagues, and it doesn't matter how many greats he played with while in the minors, he never got to sport a big league ball cap. After coaching the Tacoma Giants for 2 seasons and spending 16 years on the road, Sal headed home to San Jose for good, and in 1965 was hired to coach baseball at Santa Clara University, and would have a solid 15-year career and an S.C.U. Hall of Fame coaching career before retiring in 1979, passing away shortly thereafter at the age of 57, leaving his mark as the winningest coach in school history, and still is by far, with 511 wins to only 249 defeats. Yes, that's 67% win rate. Coach Taormina's teams won 6 conference championships, 5 of those in a row, 5 straight NCAA tournament appearances. They were runner-ups in the College World Series, and he was named 1972 WCC Coach of the Year, topping off his career as the 1978 Northern California Baseball Association champs. He produced 5 All-Americans, 4 WCC Athletes of the Year, with 12 of his players turning pro. Only Pepperdine University holds more league titles than Santa Clara University. So around this part of California in the 1970s, soccer became really popular during a big health and exercise craze. A soccer league was formed with a rule that every kid plays at least half the game. A lot of parents forced their kids to join. I used to help my dad coach Ed's AYSO soccer team and would take some of the kids to the side and work on basic skills to help them boost their confidence. It was really neat to see them change in the little kids, now enjoying the game when at first they felt dumb and didn't like it, and were only there because their parents made them. What you talking about, water boy? Well, for 5 years, Sal Taormina coached Santa Clara University's soccer team, winning many games and awards. This has to be said because we're big soccer fans around here. And I know Hank Hill believes, Bobby, soccer was invented by European ladies to keep them busy while the men did the cooking. Bobby. And he might be right, but I still like soccer. Getting back to baseball, and some of the other notable baseball coaches early on at Santa Clara U, MLB scout Patty Cotrell, Len Casanova, who also coached Santa Clara University's football team and the Oregon Ducks football team. Another name you'll know if you watch my show, Walter Duster Mayles, who is a local legend for his 1920 World Series games. He also coached at S.C.U. The autograph in the thumbnail is from 1955 when Sal was on the Seals. Dad got that autograph at Seal Stadium. Speaking of Seal Stadium, you know how sometimes somebody has to make that first move? On this day, September 15th, 1957, it was San Francisco Seals' last ever game, a doubleheader versus the Solons. Late in the second game, Sal Taormina went up to the public address system and spoke to all the fans about how Seals coach Cap Wright was dying of cancer, and he told the crowd that the players from both teams already gave up their pay for the day. The game was then stopped and every player went into the stands and held out their cap as they walked through Seal Stadium. Some 20 minutes later, PA announcer Jack Rice asked the crowd, "Has everyone been reached out there?" "No," shouted the people. So they kept passing the hat, with the coaches joining in. Whose ball caps were being passed around? First of all, the guy who started it, Sal Taormina. I'll just mention some of the other Seals: Marty Keogh, Pumpsy Green, Leo Keeley, Leo Righetti, and managers Joe Gordon and Tom Heath. The game would continue, finishing with a pop-up that was caught, ending the game and an era of Seals baseball after 50-plus years in the city. The packed crowd at Seal Stadium stood and clapped for 5 minutes. And as you know, some of my shows end by saying something like this. And even though Sal Taormina never made it to the major leagues, he can always tell his grandkids stories about all the great players and future legends he played with and later coached. He can tell them about that one season at the end of his career when he was a slightly out-of-shape 38-year-old, but stole more bases that season than a 22-year-old Willie McCovey. Now, normally, that would have been the end of the show, but because today is St. Patrick's Day, we'll end the show like this, with my usual, now back to the start of today's episode and my intro. In today's case, talking about an Italian and now 3 Spanish cities on this St. Patrick's Day. So let's go. Santa Clara Broncos' first intercollegiate baseball game was in 1883, when the Jesuit fathers finally allowed the Santa Clara team to travel up north to St. Mary's for an overnighter. This would be the start to one of the oldest and most heated college baseball rivalries in the West. 2 other S.C.U. opponents from way back then, Stanford 1892 and College of the Pacific since 1895, and both remain fixtures on the Broncos' schedule to this day. So if you're still awake and wondering how I'm going to tie all this together and wrap up the St. Patrick's Day show in a shamrock style, again, like this. For nearly 150 years, it has been a long-standing tradition for Santa Clara University to play St. Mary's on St. Patrick's Day. I looked it up, not this year. So much for tradition.